Listen, if you've been feeling like the ground is shifting beneath your feet every time you look at a grocery receipt, I have some news for you. It's not just inflation. We are living through the final chapters of a 50-year monetary experiment that started in 1971, and for the bumblebees, the January 30th Warsh shock was the official starting gun for a new global order. While the outer circle is arguing about Bitcoin prices, the smart money is quietly moving their chips into a system where paper promises are being replaced by hard, productive assets. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on why your retirement is the collateral damage in a game of global musical chairs, and how you can win by owning the floor the chairs are standing on. We've seen the global economy go through hiccups before, but the January 30th Warsh shock is a different beast entirely. To the outer circle, the people still clinging to 2010 playbooks, this looks like a random spike in volatility. But to the bumblebees, this is the official end of the paper kingdom. I'm the Asian girl, and today we're looking at the 3 structural shifts that just changed the rules of your retirement forever. We are moving from a world of unlimited printing to a regime of hard assets and productive power. And if you don't understand why the US dollar is suddenly being sacrificed to save the industrial base, you're going to be the exit liquidity for the central banks. Let's look at the data, ignore the headlines, and see why this isn't just a market cycle. It's a total reboot of how wealth is measured. To understand the chaos of 2026, we have to look back at 1971, the year the world collectively entered the paper kingdom by severing the final tie between the dollar and gold. This move allowed America to run a beautiful but dangerous loop where we exported paper promises and imported real physical goods, effectively allowing us to live far beyond our productive means for over half a century. However, as any seasoned investor knows, you cannot run a global superpower on a high-interest credit card forever without eventually hitting the brick wall of reality. That wall is our current $37 trillion debt, a number so vast that it signals the end of the "trust me, I have a printer" era and the beginning of a world that demands tangible output. The bumblebees aren't waiting for a permission slip from the Fed to protect themselves. They are already preparing for the inevitable revaluation, where real money must once again be backed by real energy and real production. There are 2 Americas currently fighting for the steering wheel of your portfolio, and the winner will determine if the bumblebees thrive or get liquidated in this new regime. On one side, we have financialized America, the world of the outer circle that has dominated since the 1980s, fueled by a strong dollar, cheap overseas labor, and stock prices that go up solely because companies borrow cheap money to buy back their own shares. However, the Warsh shock has signaled the return of productive America, the version that actually builds factories, produces energy, and creates tangible output right here at home. As Graham Stephan would tell you, you cannot run a manufacturing powerhouse with a super strong dollar because it makes our labor too expensive to compete on the global stage, which is why the Fed is now making the brutal choice to sacrifice the currency in your pocket to save the industrial base. For us, this means the era of chasing high-flying tech hype is over, and the real wealth will belong to those who pivot their 70% core into the poles and wires of the physical world. Enter Kevin Warsh. His nomination created a paradox. He wants hard money, less printing, which makes the dollar look strong, but the administration wants to win a trade war, which requires a weaker dollar. This tension is why the DXY is acting like a roller coaster on a bad track. Bumblebees. The dollar is no longer just a currency, it's a weapon of economic warfare. When the Fed signals higher for longer, it's a lead weight on speculative tech. If you're betting on moon missions right now, you're betting against a Fed chair who thinks fiscal sanity is more important than your 24-hour gains. In 2026, we've learned the hard way that Bitcoin ETFs are not a safe haven, but rather a high-speed delivery system for institutional panic. When the Warsh shock hits and retail investors rush to hit the redeem button on their apps, these massive funds are mechanically forced to dump their physical Bitcoin into a market that has already run out of buyers. This creates the ETF death spiral, where the lower the price goes, the more selling is triggered, effectively opening a trapdoor under your portfolio with no bottom in sight. Unlike the bumblebees who hold their assets in a way that allows them to weather the storm, the outer circle is discovering that these paper receipts turn into a liability the moment the liquidity evaporates. By understanding this mechanical risk, you can avoid becoming the exit liquidity for the sharks and instead use your 10% dry powder to catch the floor when the forced selling finally exhausts itself. To truly understand the bumblebee's strategy, you must stop measuring your wealth in fluctuating dollars and start calculating it in the only finite resource you have: time. In 1968, a single 40-hour work week at the federal minimum wage could buy you roughly 1.6 ounces of physical gold, meaning 1 week of your life was worth a significant stake in real-world collateral. Today, that same 1.6 ounces of gold would cost you over 22 weeks of full-time labor at the current minimum, proving that while your paycheck looks larger, the ruler the government uses to measure your life has shrunk by nearly 90%. This hidden time tax is the primary reason why the outer circle feels like they are running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster while they stay in the same place. By shifting your perspective to this time calculus, you realize that getting ahead isn't about the number of zeros in your bank account, but about converting your devaluing currency into assets that the government cannot print more of. Our goal is to ensure that your 40 years of hard work aren't liquidated by a shrinking yardstick, but instead anchored in the hard money assets that protect your legacy for generations. The most significant tell in the global economy is that central banks are currently buying gold at a pace not seen in decades, effectively betting against the very paper systems they manage. By reclassifying gold as a Tier 1 asset under the latest Basel III regulations, the global banking elite have officially admitted that physical bars are now as valuable as cash, if not more so. For the bumblebees, this is a clear signal that the world reserve status of the U.S. Treasury bond is fading, as nations like China and India build parallel systems to settle trade without relying on the dollar. When the people who own the printing presses start trading their own paper for hard assets, they are telling you that the era of trust is being replaced by an era of verification, and you should be positioning your portfolio accordingly. Furthermore, this pivot isn't just about diversification. It's a strategic withdrawal from the confiscation risk that comes with holding paper assets in a fractured geopolitical landscape. When central banks watch the outer circle of nations weaponize the dollar through sanctions and freezes, they realize that a digital entry in a ledger is only an asset as long as you remain on friendly terms with a record keeper. Gold, however, carries no counterparty risk. It cannot be debanked, deleted, or devalued by a foreign treasury's policy shift. The moral and the math of 2026 is modern feudalism, a system designed to devalue your 40 years of hard work to force you back into the productivity loop. In this new regime, the government and big tech don't want you sitting on a pile of cash. They want your capital active and competing in an economy dominated by AI and robots. If you aren't positioned in assets that produce real-world value, the poles and wires of the infrastructure, you will find yourself as a tenant in an economy you used to own, paying fees to the very systems you helped build. The bumblebees win by recognizing that this transition is a wealth transfer from those who save to those who own the means of production. By anchoring your legacy in the umbrella companies that thrive when it pours, you ensure that you remain a landlord of the new industrial machine rather than just another high-speed passenger on a turbulent flight. So, how do we apply this? We use the 70-20-10 rule with surgeon-like precision to ensure your portfolio isn't just a collection of symbols on a screen, but a fortress that produces real-world utility. 70% goes into the moats. These are your landlord assets, infrastructure, energy, and utility toll booths that the world must pay to use regardless of what the Fed does with interest rates. 20% goes into dividend growers. These are your shock absorbers, consisting of high-quality companies that have a history of increasing their payouts even during the most turbulent economic cycles, effectively turning market volatility into a monthly paycheck. Finally, 10% stays in dry powder. This is your insurance policy of physical gold and short-term treasuries, giving you the liquidity to act as the buyer of last resort when the outer circle panics. By following this ratio, you aren't gambling on the weather of the market, you're building a stadium that produces income regardless of which way the wind blows. This strategy is about moving from a buy and hope mentality to a build and own strategy that thrives even as the dollar shifts its role in the global order. When you own the poles and wires of the economy, you stop worrying about the war shock and start looking forward to the opportunities it creates for those who are prepared. The bumblebees understand that the goal isn't to beat the market every single day, but to ensure that your legacy is anchored in the productive assets that the new world reserve currency system will eventually be built upon. So, what is the bumblebee tactical response to this $15 trillion reset? First, you must audit your paper risk. Look at your ETFs and 401ks and ask yourself how much of that is backed by real output and how much is just a digital promise that can disappear in a liquidity crunch. Second, you anchor your wealth by applying the 70-20-10 rule with extreme discipline, moving 70% of your core into moat-heavy infrastructure and the energy sectors that provide the literal power for the AI revolution. Finally, you accumulate the floor. Use your 10% dry powder not to buy the dip of speculative memes, but to snatch up dividend-paying titans when the outer circle panics. You stop being a victim of the currency reset and start being a shareholder in the new American industrial machine. The great liquidation of 2026 is not an ending, but a necessary clearing of the noise that allows the bumblebees to finally see the true value of a productivity-based economy. We are transitioning away from a speculative casino and back into a powerhouse of real-world assets, which means your focus must shift from daily red numbers to the long-term cash flow-producing ledger of tomorrow. I'm the Asian girl, and my mission is to ensure you aren't just surviving these whoosh shocks, but using them as the unbreakable foundation for a legacy that outlasts any temporary Fed policy or market cycle. Stay grounded, keep your 70-20-10 ratio in check, and for heaven's sake, go drink some water and touch some grass. You've earned the peace of mind that comes with having a plan while the rest of the world is just guessing. Click here to watch another video. YouTube picked it out for you based on what you like watching.